Hi again. Let's continue working on our web page here. We added some styles to set the background color, and we played with some selectors. We played with the nth child and the child selector, right? So what I'd like to do next is I would like to start getting the header in order, right? So I've got the title here, and then I have this list of links. But what I'd like to do is I'd like the list of links to show horizontally, and I want to put it on this side of the page. And to do that, we'll use a feature called Flex Box. And Flex Box is a one-dimensional layout. Think about that, right? So one-dimensional layout. So essentially, it lets you align things in a line. And the line can be horizontal or it can be vertical, okay? So, here, the list is aligned vertically, but we actually would like the list to align horizontally, right? We'll do some other things too, like we can style away these bullet points too, right? We can set what the links look like. We can get rid of that underline and change the color. Okay. So what are we going to do? So first of all, we need to be able to target this header. Now we kind of have a problem because if we use the header tag, then it'll style the headers here, right? So it'll get the header that appears in the other sections, so that won't work. If we did the child selector, if I said section child header, I could get this one, but actually this header also fits the same description because it's a child of a section. So that won't work either. So, and we could use nth child, but then that starts to get a little awkward. Like we could say, section child header first child, right? And that would be just this one, but that's a little awkward. So I think what would be better is if we gave this a name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a class name, and I'll call it, like, how about page header? How about like that, right? So now I've got a name that applies specifically to this element. Okay, let's give that a style. So I'll go up here to my style, and class names we write in our style sheet with the dot. So whenever we have a selector that refers to a class, we always put the dot in front of it. Okay, so now this will only apply to something that has page header as a class name. Okay. Okay, great. So what do we do here? How do we get the page header to arrange itself on a horizontal axis rather than a vertical axis? Now, the first thing that we got to understand is that Flexbox always is applied to the parent element, and the rules apply to the children. Okay? So in our case, if we apply Flexbox to header, then the rules that we apply will only affect the H1 and the nav. Okay, they will not affect the UL or these LIs or the A tags because those things are descendants. They're not immediate children of the header, right? So it'll only apply to these two. Okay, so let's give that a try. So what I want to do is I want to say display, and there's a few display modes you can choose from. You can see a whole list of choices here, and the one I want to choose is called Flex. So I'm going to say display flex, and then when I save and I refresh the page, you can see these are arranged horizontally now. Now the list isn't arranged horizontally, but we'll apply flex to this UL and then it will be, right? But for right now, we're just talking about this element and this element, right? Okay, so that's great. So everybody's lined up here, right? They're lined up horizontally. Let's just spell it out though. By default, Flex does a direction called row, so that means horizontal, right? And there's another alternate option called column. Oops, let's do Flex direction. And so we've done row here, right? So if I look, it looks like this. If I do column, you'll see it'll align vertically, right? So we're going to stick with row. This is the default value, but I'll just write it in there so it's kind of obvious what we're doing, right? And now what I want to do is I want to say, like, okay, in the row, how should things be aligned? So what you can do is you can imagine that there's like a piece of string that runs through the word Android and through this list all the way across the page here. And these things are, this H1 and this list right here are on that piece of string, and you can slide them along the string and tell them where to go. So like if it was an abacus or something, I could take these two beads and I could push them all the way to the other side of the page. And you could do that in code by saying justify content. Okay, and if I say justify content flex end, then what I'm saying is justify content is the rule that lets us align things along the main axis, which for us is row, right? If we set this to column, then the main axis would be vertical, right? If we say flex start, that's where the elements are now, and if I say flex end, they're going to be on the opposite side of the page, right? We can also arrange them in a few different ways. So there's another one called center. And if I do it as center, then the two elements slide to the middle. Imagine these were two beads and there was a piece of string along here and I could slide them, right? Okay. If you choose space around, then they're kind of divided up. And what's happened here is the computers said you've got two elements. These elements take up a certain amount of space, and then the leftover space is divided on the outside of the two elements. So if I drew a line here, the space here would be equal to the space here, and the space here, and the space over here, right? So the extra space is divided around the elements. If you want to push the elements, the two beads, to either side of the page, like push this one over here and push this one to the other side, then we can use space between. Okay, so that looks pretty good. We need a little bit of space. I got my padding here, but I didn't put the padding on the header, right? So that looks pretty good. Let's fix that really quick. I used padding of 2M, and that's going to be kind of our global padding, but I also want, besides applying that to the sections here, I also kind of wanted to apply that to this header at the top. So, and I kind of want this rule, if I change this one for these guys, I probably want to change it for the top two. So actually we can use another special selector. If I use the comma in a selector, this is called the group selector. So you can write one whole selector here. And then if I write, body, child, section, child, header, right? This should apply only to the first header, right? Because it's the only one that's a child of where it's the child of a section that's a child of the body, right? So if you have to write the whole selector here, right? But if I write the comma there, I can have one whole selector. Everybody that matches this selector gets this style. And then if after the comma, I write a whole nother selector, then everybody that matches this selector will get the same style. They can share it, right? So let's do that. So that doesn't look too bad. Maybe there's a little too much height here, but we'll address that later, right? Okay, so that looks pretty good. Hey, let's arrange this guy in a horizontal row. Okay, so you could even stop the video now and try it yourself, following the same rules that we used here, right? But all you need to do is apply it to the UL that contains these links. Okay, so you could try that on your own, and if you did it, good for you. And if you didn't, we'll go over it right now and we can talk about it, right? So I'm going to do that right now. So I have this nav UL. So maybe I'll do this. I know that this UL is a descendant. It's somewhere in page header. So we'll use a new selector, right? And there's a few different selectors you could use here, right? I'm going to do this one. So using the space, that means that anytime this appears anywhere inside here. Now remember the arrow means a child, so it has to be immediately following, right? The UL means anywhere inside there. So here you can see I started up here, and then I have a nav, and then here's the UL. It's actually it's like 2 levels down, right? But this will apply to it, okay? The space, right? This is called the descendant selector, okay? Okay, great. So now what I want to do is I want to say display flex, right? Now remember, Flexbox applies to the children, so when I do display flex here, it's going to, this UL is going to arrange its children, which are these LI tags, right? So if I refresh, you can see everybody's in a row now, and that's looking pretty good except for this dot, and then everybody's kind of bunched up a little too close together. So let's fix that, right? So besides styling the UL as display flex, let's also, just for fun, let's say flex direction is row, just so we say that out loud. And then let's also remove the bullet points. So to remove the bullet points, we'll say list style, okay? And we can say none. So I don't want a list style, okay? The UL comes with some extra padding and margin. So if I select the UL here in the inspector and then I look, you can see it's got 40 pixels of padding on the left side and then 16 pixels of margin at the top and bottom. So you know what I'll do is I'll remove both of those. I'll say, padding of 0, margin of 0. Okay, great. So that looks pretty good. I kind of have a weird problem now, though, because it's a little hard to see here, but like you can see, like if you drew a line underneath Android, it would end up here, and then these guys are a little too high, right? So let's fix that also. That's going to be an issue that we put here under page header, because it's the UL and the H1 are being laid out by this flex element, right? So the main axis is row, and we use justify content to determine like where things fall on the main axis. There's another property called align items, okay? And align items determines how things align on the cross axis. So if your main axis is row, then how they align vertically is affected by align items. And there's a few choices you can get here. I'm going to choose center. And now you can see both of these things are centered, right? If I choose baseline, then they should align at the bottom edge of the text, right? So you can see that moves down. So if you drew a line right underneath the word Android, it should underline or follow this underline right here, okay? Okay, so there we go. So we got align items now. So that's the cross axis. So that's pretty much like most of what you'll use with Flexbox. You'll set display flex, you'll set the flex direction, you'll choose how you want to align things on the main axis with justify content, and then you'll align things on the cross axis with align items, okay? Let's add one more style here. I really want to style these guys so they're a little further apart. So what I think I'll do is I'll say, page header, and then what I want to do is I want to get these anchor tags right here. So maybe I'll just do a descendant selector to get all the anchor tags inside a page header, and I'm going to actually give these guys display block. Anchor tags are inline elements by default, so I'm going to declare them block, and then what we can do is we can give them margin or padding. Actually, padding might be good too. I'll give them padding, right? Padding will be good for us because the padded area goes inside, and it'll make the clickable area of the link larger. If we do margin, the margin area is not clickable, right? So let's say, what if we do like 1M of padding, right? Yeah, maybe that's a little too much. Actually, that doesn't look too bad. We'll just stick with that for now. But you could make this a little smaller. Let's see here. What if I make it, what if I do this? What if I do 0.5M? So that'll be about half as much, right? Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. Hey, as long as we're here and we're styling the anchor tags, usually I don't like this underline on the anchor tag, and you can get rid of that with text decoration. And we can set it to none. Okay, so I'll set that to none, And there we go. And then the underline is missing, right? Okay, great. Thanks for watching. And we'll continue, and we'll use Flexbox again to lay out the images here. And you can actually try that on your own. I'll do it in the next video, though. But if you want to try that on your own, give it a try.